Good afternoon, everyone. It's Viktor speaking, and thank you for watching my video. The reason why I decided to do a video is because I've seen plenty of questions in regards to transits on the Facebook page, and I think I understand why you guys have got so many questions, but I just wanted to clear up some of the myth around transits for you, so you might have got a better understanding over this. Because when you have a question about a personal chart, first of all, it is impossible to give you an advice if you don't post your chart. Secondly, let's suppose you are asking about a Saturn transit in your midheaven. Most of you would say that it is going to affect your career, but it is not always the case. And that's why we need your personal chart so we can actually give you maybe a better insight over your transits. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to give you a little bit of a knowledge what I feel it would be important to talk about when we analyzing transits. And then I would like to show you, for instance, an example what Saturn could be indicating in your chart. So, as you might know, transits are about actual movements in the sky. It is definitely one of the most popular timing techniques. And if I really want to be honest, I would say one of the reasons why I don't necessarily like transits so much is because it is the same for everyone. And therefore, it is the most it could be the most confusing timing technique as well, especially if you don't have a great understanding over transits. Now, usually the transits are giving you opportunities to deal with a situation issues in your life. Um, Obviously, there are different type of transits. I usually classify them into 5 groups. So you're gonna have when a transiting planet is conjuncting a point in your chart, then you're gonna have the opposition and you're gonna have the square. Now, when I look at transits, I tend to be having a look at these 3, and not because I'm a negative person, but we humans tend to be a little bit greedy, and then when a good thing happens in our life, we might not even notice it. And one of the myths is that Jupiter is going to be one of the best planet ever, and it is definitely giving you, some positive events in your life. Let's say when it's transiting your 7th house, for instance. Um, when Jupiter transits the 7th house, I've seen divorces happening, but I've also seen marriages happening as well at the same time. So therefore, your personal chart is going to be hugely important. So I give you an example. For instance, let's suppose on the 17th of November, you're going to have a Saturn transiting a natal point in your chart. Right now, Saturn is in Capricorn, right? So Capricorn is an earth sign. What we need to know about earth signs is that earth signs are all about stability, all about holding on to things, even the material world, financials, material security, really, that's what the earth signs are talking about. And the earth signs tends to be a little bit slow making, slow decision makers. So therefore, you know what? If you see a Saturn transit happening on a natal point in your chart in Earth sign, most probably it's not going to happen around those periods because the Earth signs, as well as the fixed signs, tend to be a little bit stubborn, and usually they are reluctant to make the change immediately. So, for instance, when the Saturn hits your natal chart, natal point in your chart, most probably that's going to be an internal change first. And maybe a couple of months or 6 months down the line, it is going to bring you an event as well. So in many cases, um, um, my clients are asking me, yes, Victor, but Saturn hit my Venus in 2018, February. And then I only got divorced, let's say in August, September time. And most probably, one of my first guess is that maybe it's something to do with a fixed sign, or maybe it's something to do with an earth sign. Now, as you guys know, Uranus is transiting your Taurus house, right? Uranus at the moment is about 4 or 5 degrees. Now, if you've got any planets in Taurus and Uranus hits it, the event might come a little bit later because Taurus is a fixed earth sign. So that's the most stubborn of all. And therefore, when it comes to changes, Taurus tends to be resistant about it. Okay, so each of us have got parts of the chart where we are reluctant to make changes. Obviously, some will love it. Who will love it? For instance, Gemini, because we're talking about the mutable air signs. Okay, and mutable is all about flexibility, adaptability, right? Um, and the cardinal pretty much likes the changes as well because the cardinal ones are the go-getters. They go and get things done as soon as possible. Okay, so just to sum it up, what I'm trying to say here is that the earth signs and the fixed signs need a time frame for the change. They can't do things immediately. One of the things to consider here is the planetary cycles. We've got plenty of those. I picked a couple of them. So obviously a transit is happening, for instance, in a sign from Aries to Pisces. If you think about transits at the moment, Neptune is in Pisces. So by the time Pisces finishing by the time Neptune, sorry, finishes in Pisces, that's going to be an end of a cycle. And Neptune is going to start a new period because the Pisces is the last sign. That's going to be the closure for Neptune. And obviously, Aries is going to be an initiation point. So Neptune starts something fresh in your chart. Wherever Aries is in your chart, that's going to be an initiation point. And whenever that gets hit by a transit, most probably you are going to start something in regards to that planet. This is exactly the same with the houses as well. The first house is going to be the initiation point, and the 12th house is going to be the closure. Now, there could be, for instance, a Jupiter and the Saturn cycle happening in your chart as well. Because Jupiter and Saturn get together every 20 years. So whenever Jupiter and Saturn are in conjunction with each other, which is going to happen next year, right, in Aquarius, then you are ending a 20-year cycle and then you start in a new one. So when you do transit work, I recommend having your chart printed off, and then on the side, just list the most important transits. And I'm going to be talking about in a while what transit to pay attention to, in my opinion, the most. Now, how I approach transits are that you have got the free will to choose which energy you use of each planet. Each of the planets want to be friends with us. Each of the planet has got negative and positive qualities. Try to use those positive qualities um, rather than focusing on the negative one. Because probably if you start focusing on the positive things, the small little positive things, the big picture just comes together. And I'm going to show you an example on that one as well, because, for instance, in my chart, Pluto has had a conjunction with Mercury. And Pluto, one of the Pluto's meaning is a power struggle. Another meaning to Pluto is going to be destroying things and then rebuilding, rising up from the ground and then becoming, someone who is more mature. So to give you an example here, what I mean by transits, and I'm going to show you a different one as well. when I'm going to share the screen, and then you can see the actual chart as well. But let's suppose transiting Saturn conjunct natal Mercury in Sagittarius in the 7th house. One of the first things you have to do is to figure out what Saturn means. So we know what Saturn means. Saturn indicates hurdles, obstacles, delays, consolidation. It might indicate an elderly person in the chart. It is all about hierarchy, structure, systemizing things, mastering things. So one of the first things most people would think about having a transit in Saturn in the 7th house is, oh, maybe the relationship is a little bit rocky and things need to work out in a different way. But there are so many other manifestation levels that Saturn in conjunction with Mercury. The next step is going to be, what does Mercury act like in the natal charts? What's the function of Mercury there? What's the meaning of Mercury there? So think about it. What's Mercury? It's all about writing, speaking, communication, listening, driving, siblings, neighbors in your chart, and so on. There are plenty of meaning to each of the planets, right? The next step when you do a transit work is figuring out what Saturn is doing in your natal chart. That's hugely important, because imagine that the natal Saturn is drawing the energy into the transited house. So you've got the transiting Saturn in the 7th house, and let's suppose you've got Saturn in Scorpio in your 6th house. So that Saturn is drawing the energy into the 7th house onto Mercury. So Mercury is going to be colored by the natal Saturn meaning in your chart. So what does Saturn mean in Scorpio in the 6th house? 6th house is lifestyle, health, daily routines, exercise, work colleagues. What does Scorpio means? Sexuality, other people's resources, intimacy. So maybe when Saturn hits your Mercury, you are needed to learn a lesson about intimacy. And you need to be able to communicate to your partner about it. Scorpio is the sign of control. Maybe you need to learn about controlling issues, and that's going to be a huge topic with your partner. So Saturn does not necessarily mean that you are going to have a divorce or you are going to have, a breakup with your partner. Another thing which is very important to consider is, what type of aspects does Mercury have in the natal chart? Because not only Mercury will get activated, but all the tight aspects as well. So what I usually do is I have a look at the tightest aspects, the two tightest aspects, and then I'm going to be integrating those into my reading as well. Okay, so when I show you an example, I think it's going to be a little bit more understandable. So taking it further, Mercury, as we said, Mercury is in Sagittarius in the 7th house. So somehow the communication is linked to other people. What does Sagittarius mean? Low, foreign matters. So, and Saturn is the planet of responsibility. Mercury is a verbal or a written contract, for instance. So maybe with that Saturn and Mercury conjunction, you are going to be signing a contract with a foreign organization, maybe with a foreign country's business. It can be an international contract. However, we know that Saturn is the planet of difficulties. So you might have got difficulty in communicating with your partners, but it could be your sibling as well. Don't forget to have a look what house Mercury rule in your chart. And those are going to be the Gemini and the Virgo houses. Obviously, in my opinion, you always need a good Saturn for a marriage as well. And if Saturn is the planet of commitment and Mercury is the planet of contracts, you are signing a contract, you are signing a commitment. And therefore, that could be indicating someone who is going to get married. Now, the most important transits, let's just have a look at which one is always worth to have a look at. One of them is going to be a slow-moving planet transiting your sun, your moon, and one of the four angles. Now, why the slow-moving planets? The reason being is because you've got the personal planets, and the personal planets are going to be Venus, Mars, and Mercury. They are very fast-moving planets. Mercury tends to spend, what, 21 days in one sign? Um, Venus is about a good 30, 40. It really depends on the speed, how far she's away from the sun. And obviously, you've got Mars, which can be up to 6 days as well. Again, really depending on the speed. Each of the planets has got different speeds, which you can have a look at from the ephemerides. You can just Google that, and then you can have a look how fast the planets are moving. Now, therefore, working with the personal planet transits is not necessarily a good idea because they are going to be affecting your moods and maybe your everyday activities. But I also want to put it out there, the transits are nothing else but a process. And then when you get to the end of a process, that's when usually the event is coming around. Um, let's talk about, for instance, divorce. It's not going to happen from one day to another. And the reason being is because there are some events happening beforehand, which is kind of making you to make that step to get divorced for your loved ones. So when I work with transits, I usually have a look at Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, and Uranus. Now, what I have noticed is that working with Neptune transits can be a little bit tricky. And the reason being is because Neptune is the planet of illusion. If you are deluded by a situation, the astrologer might become a little bit deluded as well. So, and Neptune usually brings some internalized feelings. Of course, maybe the veil drops off and there is going to be an energy shift within you in regards to one of the meta, what's actually the personal planet or Neptune brings into the picture. Uranus, it is worth being careful with Uranus as well. And the reason being is because Uranus is a sudden event. Usually it indicates a sudden event, and it's quite rebellious as well. Now, what Uranus does is, when you do a prediction with Uranus, usually there is always an element of trick involved as well. As Uranus being the higher octave of Mercury, Uranus can play tricks on us quite nicely. So there is always an element of twist in the situation when Uranus hits one of your personal planets. And I guess I've got an example for that to show you today. As I said, the most important transits are going to be any of these slow-moving planets to the sun, moon, and the four angles, or if the ruler of your first house transits a natal point in your chart, or maybe that planet gets a transit from a slow-moving planet. Those definitely bring in some events into your life. So let's just cover what the four angles mean. So the rising sign is things you like doing, things you are interested in, things which motivate you. But also it is talking about your expectation as well. Usually when a transit happens in around your rising sign, there is going to be a change in your environment. The descendant, obviously, it is talking about partnership, as well as a discovery of yourself throughout other people. Now, you've got the midheaven, which is the highest point of the chart, okay? And therefore, that's going to be a culmination point as well in the chart. So it could be showing what to do in order for you to achieve that success, to achieve your goals. But it could also be an inner feeling within you to become someone, an intention to become successful in your life. Midheaven is showing your life direction. It's not only about your profession. Midheaven also shows how people see you before they get to know you. And I'm sure plenty of you have experienced that before, that you know, they misjudge you at work, for instance, because they never went out with you. But when you go out, you act in a completely different way. And obviously the rising sign, how I usually describe the rising sign is that it is like an onion, and the layers need to be peeled off in order for you to get to the juicy part. So there is always a little bit of a barrier in front of you to become whoever you want to become. So when there is a transit happening around your midheaven, most probably people are going to be seeing you in a different way, because the midheaven is going to take on the energies of the transiting planets. Now you've got the IC, which is at the bottom of the chart. So that is talking about the roots, where you are coming from. That is going to be talking about your family, your home environment, of course, but the IC is also the end of a matter. So it could be actually a closure coming to you in some way. And the transits usually want to remind you of where you came from. And that's hugely important to remember. And I'm also going to show you an example on that too. So usually the outer planets might feel you as fated events, because they tend to be hanging around the personal point in the chart for quite a long time. So when we talk about Jupiter, Jupiter can be around for a good 80 to 60 days around your natal point, really depending on where Jupiter goes retrograde. Is it going to be hitting again your natal point or not, and so forth. Now, Saturn has got a tendency to stay around for up to 8 months, but it could also be just 1 month. Again, the same principle belongs here as well. Now, when we talk about Uranus and Pluto, well, Pluto can last up to 2 years as well, before it actually decides to move on and then leave your personal planet alone. So when a planet hits your personal chart 3 times, the first one usually an indication, an introduction, what the next period is going to look like. It's going to be bringing you a situation which you have to deal with. If you didn't deal with it, then the second hit is going to be a reminder for you, and you have to revisit that topic. And obviously, the second hit would happen when the planet turns retrograde. So retrograde, as the first suffix of the word indicates, re. So this is going to be a topic which you have to revisit. And the third is going to be a resolution for you. How I usually approach it, if you don't take action by the second hit, usually the third one is not an easy one, regardless of how benefic the planet is. Usually the third one is not going to be a pleasant one, because the third one is all about mastering those skills, what the planet wants you to be a master of. Great. So to show you an example, my screen is shared. By the way, when I teach astrology, I always make these slides, and I always send them over to my students because I think it's easier for them to, to follow, and then it gives me a little bit of a structure as well, so that I don't lose the plot. By the way, I'm going to have a webinar coming up on the 15th. So I'm inviting all of you for that. It's going to be talking about family dynamics as well as how to use composite charts. This is one of my favorite topics, and I'm going to tell you why. I do believe that we learn every single bit from our family. Even though you don't have a family uh, contact, somehow the birth is going to give you those imprints, those feelings. And once you manage to discover those, once you manage to overstep those, then I think your life can get a lot better. And the composite chart is a great tool to discover, for instance, what's your how the relationship is between you and, for instance, your loved ones. It could be family member, it could be your boss, it could be your love life, whoever you want to compare your chart with, just to have a little bit a look, what the karmic duties is like. So I'm going to be holding a webinar over that on 15th of November. So if you are interested, then I'm going to put the link below, and then you can sign up for it. There are going to be two versions, just the webinar, and then there is going to be a discount reading offered as well. I think it's 40% off from the reading for an additional amount. Okay, so let me show you a chart here. I received the permission from the person to show the chart. This is going to be one of a great friend of mine. So when you do transit work, you can see, try to pick the most important transits. And it is, don't try to read everything into it because you're going to get confused with it. So you can see that we've got Saturn at the moment. You can scroll down here. You can see it's on 15 degree 38 minute at the moment. So you can see that Saturn has been going around the midheaven for a while. And the first hit happened a year ago. What would be your first thought? Most probably it would be that there is going to be a restructuring going on around the midheaven, which is your profession, right? So you would think, oh, maybe it's going to be a tough period when it comes to work. Maybe you're going to lose your job, or maybe you get a promotion at work. That could also happen with Saturn and so forth. But what we forget to do is to have a look what Saturn does in the natal chart. So we can see that Saturn actually is in the 6th house in Libra. So let's start with seeing what Saturn actually means. So I put some keywords onto my slide as well, which might be helping you. Saturn, right there, it limits. It is going to be giving you some type of obstacles. It is going to be blocking some of the things, but you also have to become a master as well of something. Saturn is the planet of delays. Sorry, I wrote their contract, but I wanted to write constraints. So disregard that, please. Saturn materializes things, helps you to manifest things, deprive, moderate things, and also maybe it is increasing your caution level, or maybe you also can become a little bit depressed as well. So now we can see that this Saturn is in Libra in the 6th house. What does 6th house mean? 6th house is the planet house of daily activities. Many of you think that sixth house is somehow relating to work, and you are right, but sixth house is more to do with the work routines rather than an actual work. Sixth house is the house of work colleagues, employees. Um, Also, it could be something to do with your pets. It could be something to do with your health matters. So imagine this Saturn energy is getting pulled over onto the midheaven, and it's going to be coloring the meaning of midheaven. What is midheaven? Life direction, life purpose. Fair enough, work as well, profession. It could be indicating one of your parents in the chart. So one of the first things is we're going to have to figure out what Saturn means in the chart. So let's have a look. Saturn rules the ninth house, which is the house of opinion, truth, belief system. What does Saturn mean in Libra? There is some type of constricting energy in Libra matters. What is Libra? Relationship, legal matters. Obviously, when the sixth house is getting combined, let's say, with legal matters, maybe that's not going to be the case. But the primary meaning of Libra is going to be relationship and your partner, if you want to personalize the sign. And the sixth house, if you want to personalize the sixth house, that's going to be your work colleague. Now, as I said, their energy is getting pulled over into the midheaven. So Saturn around the midheaven actually could be questioning or testing your life purpose. It could be testing your belief system about what you should be doing in the next, 20 years, let's suppose. What's quite interesting is that Pluto was also transiting the midheaven beforehand as well. And that happened, about 2.5, 3 years ago. So Pluto might have given already signs. And then if you didn't learn what Pluto wanted you to master, then Saturn comes around and then tries to restructure those. So I can tell you what happened here with this person. She figured out that her husband was cheating on with a colleague. Now, as I said, sixth house is the colleague. Saturn there is bringing in restriction. One of the closest aspects Saturn has is with Jupiter. Jupiter rules the eighth house, which could be the house of cheatings. And you can see that in the eighth house, we've got Neptune and Mars. The veil actually falls off. How she managed to figure out is actually she asked her husband whether he is cheating on, because she could see the guilt on the person. And guess what? He couldn't say no, so he admitted everything. When did it start? It started when Pluto hit the midheaven. Now, obviously, we can have a look. Why did it happen? Pluto is in the sixth house as well. There are power struggles going on in the relationship, right? Pluto is the power struggle, Libra is the relationship, and the sixth house is the everyday activities. One of the closest aspect Pluto has is with Venus. Venus is the planet of love. So it does indicate an element of power struggle going on in the love, because the guy felt being pushed into something he didn't really want to do. What other manifestation level does this Pluto or Saturn transits has around the midheaven? As I said, sixth house rules pets. And you've got Pluto, Venus, Saturn there. So it could be showing a constricting energy around your pets. And midheaven is showing an element of need to change, direction, the way, let's say, how you treat your pets. And obviously Libra indicates your loved ones. For instance, this lady had experienced that her dog is suffering because of the relationship. And the dog started eating rocks, for instance. And then the dog needed to be operated twice. And since their relationship is fixed, basically nothing is happening. Great. So I hope this makes sense, what we try to do here. But just remember, Saturn on the midheaven does not necessarily indicate that something is going to happen at work. And you can see from this example that nothing happened at work. She's been at the same workplace for 10 years. She loves her workplace, and she has the same amount of work. She received a little bit of a pay rise. So it doesn't necessarily mean that something is going to be happening in your professional life. Great. Let's see another example here, which could be also quite interesting. By the way, the names, I've just changed them so you don't exactly know what we are talking about. Okay, so it's worth having a look at, for instance, what Saturn does here, and Pluto. So we can see that Saturn and Pluto is on the midheaven. Sorry, on the IC and opposing your midheaven. We already covered what Saturn means: obstacles, um, restriction. It could be an elderly figure, it could be an older man. Usually Saturn indicates a fatherly figure in the chart. If we have a look what Saturn does in the natal chart, you can see that it's in the second house. So there are an element of obstacles natally in the financial house, or it could be your confidence level as well. Second house rules the confidence level. Okay, and it's in Scorpio. Scorpio is other people's resources, basically money. So you might be experiencing natally in your life that you've got some, obstacles to make money. This energy get drawn into the fourth house. Guess what happens to this person? She needed to spend loads of money on her home environment. But the most important part here is that it's not about the home. It's about making the money. It's about spending the money. And what would you say about Saturn in the second house? Probably that you don't always have money to spend, or it might block your it might block your capability of being able to make money and so forth. Second house is the house of talent as well. But she managed to turn this around. She realized the positive side of Saturn. She started studying, and now she works with a topic she enjoys the most, which is Scorpio, so psychology, occult studies, and so forth. And that she started being able to make money when Saturn hit the transiting IC the third time, which is opposing the midheaven. She started making money. So that is also quite a storyteller. Nothing happened in the family so far, no death, which Saturn and Pluto could be indicating there, um, and so on. So you can see that pretty much the topic is all around financials because the natal Saturn is in the second house. Obviously, you can have a look at the closest aspects as well, what is happening, and then those could be giving you additional information about it. Okay, so I'm going to show you one more chart. So here is a chart, and you can see that Jupiter is in conjunction with Venus. Now, we know about Venus that Venus is exalted in Pisces. So we know that Venus is the planet of indulgence. And Pisces has got a tendency to let things flow out of their hands. And it's in the first house, which is the house of body. Now, you can see that Jupiter is transiting that Venus. If you start reading about Jupiter transits online, what are you going to be reading about? Pay attention to your weight because you might be putting on weight. This is my own chart. So guess what happened? I lost weight rather than putting on weight. Of course, don't look at me now because I managed to put back on, but that's a different story. But with the Jupiter transits in 2010, I actually managed to lose weight. And so let's have a look at why. First of all, Jupiter in the natal chart, what does Jupiter do? Um, and I put some keywords for you here as well, so that could be a little bit of a help. It amplifies, broadens, increases, magnifies, elaborates, exaggerates, encourages you, inflates, blesses you. Obviously, a negative Jupiter in the chart could be talking about greediness. So wherever Jupiter is in your chart, that might be showing where you are a little bit greedy. So pay attention to that. But Jupiter usually is the planet of being at the right place at the right time. Wherever Jupiter is in your natal chart, that's where you usually have got an urge to grow, to expand your horizon, or to gain more knowledge in that field. And this is going to be exactly the same in transit as well. You are trying to explore the area of life more in depth. And then if you are lucky, then you are going to feel blessed as well. Now, determining how the natal Jupiter is in the chart in this example, that's in a great sign. Jupiter is at home. And it's in an angular house as well, so that's great. However, you can see that there is a square going towards Venus. So when Jupiter reached Venus, there is also an element of activation of the square as well. Now, the natal Jupiter is in the 10th house, around the midheaven, which is talking about how you're trying to lead your life, how you want to be seen by others. And Jupiter rules the 10th and rules the first house as well. Obviously, the first house talks about your body, what you like, what you don't like, what you are interested in, how you are seen as a person once you close the door, and so on. So with that square, actually that square helped me to lose weight because I wanted other people to see me as a different person. I can tell you what happened there. I madly fall in love with someone, and then I didn't want to be fat anymore. I wanted to please, which is very much of a Pisces energy, right? Wanted to please the other person so that I could give myself more chance to get together with that person. And that's what Jupiter did. And then I started losing weight. But most probably, um, most of us would believe Jupiter on the rising sign, oh, you're going to increase your weight. And the opposite happened. And why the opposite happened? Because obviously there is a little bit of a Uranus involved in the situation as well. Jupiter has got a very close aspect to Uranus. And Uranus is the planet of sudden events, being rebellious about things, a very fast decision maker planet. You know, it is all about technology and so forth, internet. So all I did was I did plenty of research. What would be the best way for me to change my life direction, how to lose weight? And actually that was the period when I kept my weight for a good 5 years. I didn't have any other issue with it for such a long time. And then after, Jupiter was also transiting my Mars. What does Mars mean in the chart? Or what does Mars rule in the chart? It rules my second house, and then it also rules my ninth house as well. So what is second house? Second house is all about confidence. That's all about your self-esteem. That's all about financial matters. And then you've got the ninth house matter, which is about moving. Now, obviously, I had an increased level of confidence once I started losing weight, and and um, and then I just became a little bit obsessed about it. And as I said, Jupiter has got the tendency to go overboard with things because that's the planet of greediness. So I managed to get sick, and then I had some certain type of sickness going on in regards to Venus and Mars matters. Now, Venus is the planet of, for instance, kidney, and then I had issue with my kidney to start with. And then Mars is the planet of gallbladder. Why gallbladder? Because gallbladder talks about the accumulated anger within. So, and I was so frustrated about the other person I was in love with that I manifested that in a way, in a sick way. And would you expect that from Jupiter? Probably you wouldn't. But if you have a look what's happening here, you can see that Jupiter, unfortunately, is badly aspected from the first house, which is the house of health. Another way to see, for instance, that the person was going to lose weight is that the another close aspect to Jupiter is Moon, and Moon rules the stomach. Now, when Jupiter and Moon are together, you would be expecting them to the stomach to expand, right? But we need to see the very close aspect towards Venus as well, and the square. And square is pretty much either a Mars or a Saturnian type of energy. And what? Mars is the planet of push, a planet of tension. And then I felt that tension in my body that I needed to lose weight. I can give you another example. I'm just gonna be talking about that because I forgot to ask for a permission, so I'm sorry about that. But I also have seen Jupiter transit in the first house, and it was talking about a divorce. Now, Jupiter was ruling the fourth and the seventh house, and the natal Jupiter is in Aquarius in conjunction with Venus in the sixth house. As we said, a transit around the rising sign are going to be showing you basically a new start. And basically, when Jupiter hit the rising sign, um, she decided to get divorced from the husband. Why is that? Because the seventh house in that chart is ruled by Jupiter, and that's in the sixth house. That's from the 12th sign from the seventh. What does 12th house mean? Losses, a spiritual growth, subconscious level, prison, hospitals, and so on. So basically, she lost her husband. She wanted to lose the husband because she felt she felt being in a prison. And as I said, Jupiter had a conjunction with Venus, a very tight conjunction with Venus in the sixth house. Now, Venus is the planet of love. In Aquarius, Aquarius is the sign of breakup. It's the sign of emotional detachment. So I hope it makes sense what I'm trying to illustrate for you. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an advice of why not to have a general question about transits. Post your chart as well, and don't forget to have a look what the transiting planet does in the natal chart. Okay, and don't forget to have a look what houses the transiting planet rule in the natal chart, because the events are going to be happening around those rather than the actual house it transits. Of course, that house is going to be affected, but that's not going to be the cause is going to be the natal placement of the planets. So just to run through, so we covered the Jupiter keywords, we covered the Saturn keywords. Now, when it comes to Uranus, Uranus is usually tries to awaken you for something. It's usually quite a shocking event what happens in your life. It tries to liberate you, catalyzes you to start something, or break away from old patterns as well. And then if I go back on my chart, Uranus, as I said, is all about breaking away some old patterns, what you don't need, and start something fresh. And obviously that helped me a lot to lose weight there. And obviously it is in Sagittarius as well, which is your belief system, which is your opinion. So I wanted others to have a different opinion of me. Uranus surprises you. Yeah, those would be the key words to Uranus. Sometimes you might feel with Uranus emotionally detached from something. You might feel an element of rejection in that topic where Uranus is in that moment. Uranus sometimes speed things up. So from a stale situation, maybe you get to the conclusion a lot quicker. Uranus pushes you to take risks and then wants you to think outside the box as well. Great. I'm really hoping that this is going to give you a little bit of an overview of transits. And I am offering next Sunday in Budapest, Hungary time, a Q&A, a 1 hour Q&A session. So I'm gonna go live on YouTube between um, 4 to 5, as I said, Budapest, Hungary time. And then I am going to be answering some astrological questions. If you guys are interested, just comment below. And I wanna put it out there. I'm not gonna have a look at personal charts, but if you've got any astrological questions, which you are maybe a little bit confused about, then I would like to share my knowledge. And then don't forget to sign up for my upcoming webinar as well. I'm gonna do a presentation like this, and then at the end of it, I'm gonna send it to everyone as well. And I'm gonna try to make it as interesting as possible. Thank you very much and have a lovely day, everyone. Bye-bye.